Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on Arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. We're about to discuss Arsenal's 2-0 win over Sevilla in the Champions League last night, Wednesday night. It consolidates our position at the top of Group B, and we're in good shape going into the final two games of the group stage. We'll talk about the performance, the goals, some of the individuals and all the rest, and we might even squeeze in a bit of laughing at Manchester United while we're at it too. But before we do that, let me just ask a very small favour from you all. Arseblog has been nominated for Club Podcast of the Year at the Football Supporters Association Awards 2023. So we need your votes. If you look in the show notes on your app right now, whatever podcast app you use, or if you want to go to arseblog.com and find the post with this particular podcast, you will find a link to surveymonkey.co.uk in which you can vote for Arseblog to be best club podcast. We'd really appreciate it if you could take just a minute or two to do that for us. And while you're there are other Arsenal nominees in different categories. You can choose Ian Wright for Pundit of the Year. And why wouldn't you choose Ian Wright for Pundit of the Year? Particularly when one of the other nominations is Gary Neville. We cannot lose. We cannot lose to Gary Neville, folks. Bukayo Saka has been nominated for Men's Player of the Year, so you can vote for him. And in the Women's Player of the Year, Frida Maanum has been nominated too. So there's lots of Arsenal nominations and lots of Arsenal votes you can give. So please just take a moment, go to your app, go to arseblog.com, find the link and give your votes to Arseblog, to Ian Wright, to Bukayo Saka and to Frida Maanum. Right, thank you very much. I appreciate it in advance. Let's get on with the show, and with me to talk about the win over Sevilla and all the rest is Phil Costa. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Andrew. How are we doing?
We're doing all right. Both of us, I think we've got a little bit of a cold, a little bit of something going on this morning, but we're pushing through to bring the hashtag content to the people who want it. So, little medals for both of us, I think.
I think it's a hashtag respect response, because I saw a tweet going around that I think it was from a United fan that said you have to be a real sick individual to see what's happening to Manchester United and enjoy it. And I am sick, so I'm just doing my bit. We're doing our bit, Andrew.
We are. We're both sick in the literal sense and sick in the sense that we're also going to laugh at Manchester United perhaps a little bit in this podcast. So yeah, bring it on. Okay, let's start with last night and a 2-0 win over Sevilla at the Emirates. Team news, there was no Eddie Nketiah, there was no Martin Odegaard. I suppose we more or less knew that they were going to be out based on what we heard pre-game. So the decisions, I think, for Mikel Arteta were relatively simple. You play Leandro Trossard up front and you keep Kai Havertz in that midfield role, keep the same midfield that you played against Newcastle. I suppose the only thing that surprised me slightly about the lineup was the fact that Takahiro Tomiyasu started at left back. I thought this might well be a game where he brings Zinchenko in because we're at home. I wonder, do you think that was because perhaps Mikel Arteta was expecting a bit more from Sevilla than perhaps we got?
I would say so. I was quite surprised at how negative they were, and it wasn't even in the sense of, oh, we're going to buckle down and really try and stop Arsenal here. They were just nothing. They were nothing on the ball. There was no intention in any of their play, in any of their possession, and it wasn't as if they were solid defensively. I mean, we were getting in behind with frequency in that first half. They just tried to kick us, really. So maybe it was a little bit of that, maybe, just to try and secure the sides a bit more. I mean, Tomiyasu is a very capable defender. So maybe it was just that was a thought in his mind, but also just to kind of reward good form. I think Zinchenko, it's fair to say, has not been at his best in recent weeks. So, Tomiyasu has certainly earned his place in the team. And in the end, we kind of got the best of both worlds. But I wasn't overly surprised to see Tomiyasu there, although I do understand your logic of maybe thinking if we are going to have the ball, if we are going to need a bit of incision, Zinchenko definitely fits the bill in that sense.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. Like the guy who started on the right for Sevilla in the last game, Luka Bacchio, was perhaps, the sort of player that Tomiyasu might be better off dealing with, and I don't know if that played into the manager's thinking. Pre-game, the discussion was, could we get our wide men into the game in ways that we haven't necessarily done over the last couple of games, where Saka and Martinelli haven't quite reached the heights that we know they can for various reasons, and we've explored those in previous podcasts. The answer in this game was a resounding, yes, we can get our wide men into this. I mean, the tone was set very, very early on. Martinelli picked up the ball inside the first 2 minutes, had a look at the fullback, pushed it beyond him, ran past him, and won a corner. And I think that set the tone for what was to come. And maybe we can discuss Martinelli in a moment. But from that corner, from that initial corner, we probably should have been ahead. A chance for Kai Havertz at the back post. And I was like, oh, come on, man. This is your moment. That was it. You've got a lot of time to make up for it, of course. But, it was a header that lacked confidence and conviction, it would be fair to say.
Yes, I agree. I think you've been very generous with probably should have been ahead. I mean, that has to be a goal, surely. I don't know, maybe he closed his eyes. Maybe he didn't. Did he expect the ball to come to him in that moment so free? Because I know Arsenal obviously tried a little group set piece thing where they were all together at the back post and then ran to their respective positions, but did it really confuse Sevilla that much? I don't know. But the marking was poor. It absolutely should have been a goal. Lack of confidence is right. Lack of conviction is certainly right. And it's just, it needed to go in. I just think, and look, maybe we'll come on to his performance a bit later, but he needs a goal. And I think a goal, not a sympathy penalty, would just do him so much good. And that kind of felt like the moment where he could announce himself for us in a nice, easy way. It wasn't to be. But yeah, I think he'll be a bit upset about that one looking at it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking at the live blog here. And in the 13th minute, I said of Martinelli, he's got this fullback on the ropes already. And that's probably a bit of an understatement because he absolutely terrorized Juanlu. That guy's going to wake up. You know, they say if you have a nightmare, there's like, oh, it's an evil witch, or it's a dragon, or it's a monster, or it's somebody dropping on you from the ceiling. And you're like, that guy, when he went to sleep eventually last night, would have just had visions of Martinelli just running at him. Hundreds and hundreds of Martinellis just going either side of him. Like what was so interesting about this to me was that, and I'm not being critical of Martinelli in any way, was that there wasn't necessarily a great amount of variation in what he did. Because we know Martinelli can go both ways. That's one of his great skills. He can go outside the fullback or he can come back quickly inside the fullback, use his right foot, use his left foot as well if he goes outside them. But he saw this guy and just knew every single time that he could push the ball and he could run past him. And it's not just a question of pace, because you can have a differential in pace between a fullback and a winger. But if you, as the fullback, know how to defend against that winger, you can use that to your advantage. I think Juanlu is still a relatively young player. This will have been a very significant part of his learning development, because just time and time again it was like outside him, and I don't know why somebody wasn't talking to him during the game, somebody wasn't coaching him through these situations, but I've rarely seen a fullback get absolutely taken to the cleaners in that way. And the only criticism I would have, if it's a mild criticism, is that perhaps the final ball from Martinelli could have been a little more careful or deliberate a few times.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair observation. I mean, it was certainly a bloodbath. I mean, like you said, Juanlu's going to have a new sleep paralysis demon now, and that was in the form of Gabriel Martinelli. It was so clear and easy that was our way in, you know? And to be fair, he's a young defender, and I think he kind of came through the academy as a more winger style player as opposed to a right back. I think that's been quite a recent change for him positionally, is to be kind of moved backwards. But oof, yeah, there was nothing so creative or technical about it. He's just head down. I know I've got the beating of you. And they were missing the experience of Sergio Ramos in that back line. Eric Lamela was certainly not going to come back and help.
No.
So it was just every single time Martinelli was on the ball, head down, I'm taking you on and crossing. Look, it's not easy when there's 6 or 7 players in the penalty box ready to head things away. When you're running at pace, it's not always easy to get your head up and look for a more refined cross. But I think, having got in behind so many times, I would have at least been hoping for 1 or 2 to kind of generate chances. And there were some that were close. There was one that kind of went just in between Havertz and Trossard. There was another one to the back post that no one really followed in on. So look, these things could happen, but I was just happy to see Martinelli looking sharp and treat a 20-year-old right back how he deserved to be treated, which was full of disregard and I'm way better than you.
Yeah,
you know?
He didn't restrict that to Juanlu either. There were moments where he picked the ball up inside in that inside channel, and he sort of went back. He went forward. He held on to it. He turned in and out. I was fully expecting one of the Sevilla players to actually go right through the back of him because of the way he was. Like you say, not quite treating them with disdain, but it was like, you guys can't get fucking near me. There's nothing you can do to get near me. And we'll come to how effective Martinelli can be inside and outside when we get on to the second goal. But, the dominance was there. Arsenal were fully in control. There was nothing at all from Sevilla. There was nothing to worry about from a defensive point of view. It was about, could we make the chances? Could we open them up? And there were some sort of half chances. There was a Gabriel header. I think Ben White curled a shot over the bar. Saka had a free kick over the bar. There was one when Jorginho shot. That went over as well. But then the goal that we scored was just, if ever a sequence of play had training ground pattern written all over it, you know the way sometimes you see like a picture that does the rounds on a newspaper and they sort of watermark it with their logo, whatever publication it might be. This one should have Mikel Arteta's training ground routine on it. The pass from Jorginho. I watched Trossard actually. After the game, he was talking to what's it called, TNT Sport, right?
Yes.
Not BT Sport anymore, TNT Sport. Who cares? But he was asked about the goal, and he said, as soon as I saw Jorginho in that position, I knew the pass he was going to make. And the pass is absolutely brilliant, I have to say. It's really, really perfect. There's a gap there in the Sevilla backline. He threads it through perfectly for Saka. Saka across to Trossard, and I think the finish is excellent as well.
Completely. I don't think it's controversial to say that when Arsenal are at their best, their most fluid best, Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka are usually at the centre of things, for a variety of reasons that hasn't been able to happen enough this season. So it's been nice to see, maybe our defeat in Lens aside, that this memo hasn't been received by the rest of Europe. Because Sevilla just were leaving their fullbacks isolated every time and with space in behind, which I didn't understand. But like you said, it just felt in that moment that Arsenal were pushing. We'd had a few chances. We were beginning to pepper them. They were beginning to drop deeper. Just needed some finesse, some final ball, execution, some care in the last pass, then bang, there it was, And I think, look, whatever you think of Jorginho, he can pass a ball. And that was the typical defense splitting pass between centre-back and full-back. Saka is on his bike so quickly. And like you said, the movement from Trossard in the middle is also incredibly quick, very sharp. And it's an easy one. They make it look easy. But like you said, that has to be practiced on the training ground so much to be able to get that movement all in sync together, everybody on the same wavelength. And it was just something that we needed in this particular game to say, look, we've had the chances, but now we're serious. Sevilla have offered nothing. We just needed that goal to maybe open the game up a bit, and it was, perfect. I really enjoyed the move.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about Jorginho for me is that, he's got the ability to do that, but he doesn't quite do it enough. And I know as well that a player in his position is dependent on players ahead of him making those runs, and also maybe having the space that he had. Because I think if you do, I think his first instinct, and this isn't to be critical either, but his first instinct is security, right? If I've got the ball and there's two guys coming towards me, I'm going to knock it off to somebody who's in more space and we can retain possession, right? So a sort of security first outlook, which is why I think he's been such an effective player over the years. But that ability to make that pass and in tandem with some of the discussions that we've had about can we be a bit more progressive from midfield, I just wonder if we could see that a little bit more often.
You'd hope so. Look, it's not easy, but I do think what you mentioned there about security being his first thought is quite clear. He's that type of player. He's the kind of brain on the pitch. He's the metronome, the kind of tactical reference. Arteta's spoken about that a lot before. Even Pep Guardiola tried to sign him. He was a big player under Maurizio Sarri who placed a lot of value in these kind of deep-lying playmakers who can set the tone. So I don't have an issue with security. But I do feel that since he's joined the club, there has been a slight hesitancy to kind of go for those killer passes, especially when we've been sustaining pressure, where you'd sometimes look at him to unlock or have the key to unlock a game, or that moment where you can say, that's it. We needed some incision and he's got it there. So it just worked perfectly in that moment. The weight of the pass is beautiful. Saka doesn't have to break stride or anything. He's just straight onto it. First time cross into the middle. It's a goal that kind of catches them by surprise, I would say. But just the kind of the execution was something that was really satisfying to watch as a fan.
Yeah. Agree. And, I think with Jorginho, Arteta said afterwards, he's so intelligent. He understands everything so quickly. He makes everybody better. I'm really happy with his performance tonight. I do think that there are, Arteta probably sees similarities between the player he became when he dropped back deeper in midfield and Jorginho. Again, that technical security, that metronomic passing with the ability that Arteta also had. Because of his career as like an attacking midfielder and the creativity and the goals that he scored, he had the ability to make those passes from deep. And again, you are dependent on players ahead of you, but I think there's something interesting about that Jorginho Arteta dynamic. I'm not sure it's long term, clearly, because of Jorginho's age and all the rest of it, but I think he gives the manager some security as well, which is something to consider. I mean, the only moment that Sevilla had in that first half was when I can't remember who went through on goal, but Saliba made just an unbelievable, he stayed on his feet as soon as he was sure that he was going to get the ball, he slid in, knocked the ball back to Raya. Superb defending. I thoroughly enjoyed the Sevilla manager standing on the sidelines, waving his arms, going, Falta, Falta, as if, my friend, have you not seen William Saliba play in the last 12 months, 18 months? No way is that a foul. It's just a brilliant piece of defending.
Yeah, well, I mean, running out of things to say about him, to be honest. I mean, there's just such an assurance and composure to the way he plays, and he is so important for us in how we play with our high line. Like you said, that was the only chance Sevilla had until, was it injury time?
Yeah.
It was Pedrosa who ran through our midfield. He found a gap, and fair play, he went for it. There was a lot of initiative in that moment, and he thought, I've got the gap here, I can run into it. But just Saliba just put the afterburners on, and he was such a clear second favourite the whole time. But the way he just eats up ground, and it doesn't even look like he's running particularly quickly, but he's just a machine, and like you said, slid in, knocked it back to Raya, and we just go again. He's so clean and assured in everything that he does. And, 88 passes completed at 90% accuracy, 4 out of 4 aerial duels won, 4 out of 5 ground duels won. I mean, extending his contract was huge for this club and what they want to achieve with this group. I mean, imagine trying to replace a centre-back who can stride out with the ball, break lines, defend on the halfway line, and score weak foot golazos when he feels like it. You can't. You can't replace that.
What William Saliba do you think Marcel Desailly is looking at? He says, I don't believe his individual qualities to be above average. This is what he said recently. He's at a very high level, but not extraordinary. I mean, are they watching?
He hasn't watched him.
He hasn't watched him. You cannot have watched this player and not come away with the conclusion that this is a very special talent, because the defensive instincts, the physical presence, the size. I mean, imagine being a centre forward. Imagine being a forward like Pedrosa running through on goal, and you take a quick look and there's just this fucking machine running you down like a kind of defensive Terminator non-stop, and you're like, whatever else, it's going to just slightly put you on edge. Like, even if you get the shot away, his mere presence at times can be sufficient distraction to make a chance go begging. I don't understand what Desailly is on.
No, I mean, look, this leaves a sour taste, but the comparisons to Rio Ferdinand feel quite accurate, I would say, just in the way that they can play with the ball, but also this physical aura that they both possess is just incredible, really. And to be this good at 22 years of age, we've got a star on our hands. I've got no doubt about that.
For sure. So look, halftime came. There was a change from Arsenal. We were chatting on WhatsApp going, wonder is that tactical, or I wonder is that an injury? And afterwards, Mikel Arteta said Tomiyasu was feeling something. We hope it's not serious, because we've got more than enough injuries as it is. So please, no more. But he brought Zinchenko on. But also Sevilla slightly shifted the way that they were set up in order to, I suppose, pay some attention to the fact that their fullback was getting roasted over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to. It wasn't just even reacting to Juanlu. They needed to come out and play because they need a result, and it was just so passive and boring and bland in the first half from them. I mean, they offered nothing, really. And there was a spell where they had some possession at the back just to maybe try and settle things down. And it was just going from centre-back to centre-back. They had no desire to play any forward passes, and it was just complete control and domination. So Diego Alonso had to try and change something.
I mean, it worked, didn't it, to an extent? Because, in the first half, they had less than 30% possession. In the second half, possession was more or less 50-50, 52 to 48 in Arsenal's favour. So they had a bit more of the ball, but they really didn't do anything with it.
No, they tried to press a bit, but it was so disjointed. Lamela was going at some point, but then nobody was following. And then En-Nesyri was going, and he was just getting bullied by Saliba and Gabriel. There was no kind of cohesion in what they wanted to do the whole time. And even with their changes, even then it was so boring. And I was very amused by Bukayo Saka coming on, trying to foul Declan Rice, and he thought, oh, that's me done for the day. His 2-minute cameo, I mean, it was just men against boys. And, even if we weren't getting in behind as much or peppering their goal as much in the second half, we were still completely in control of the game. I had no inkling that Sevilla were going to give us any trouble in that second half.
There was a moment, maybe about 5 minutes into the 10 minutes anyway, into the second half, where Kai Havertz came very close. And I don't want to really do a whole lot on him or his performance. As I said in the blog today, I think there have been some signs of life in the last couple of games where the needle is starting to tick just a little bit, and you hope that it keeps going in that direction. But that particular moment, it's the first time I can remember since he joined where he actually hit a ball with real conviction, and he's unlucky. It went just wide. It would have been a brilliant goal, would have been a fantastic moment for the team and obviously for him. And that sort of, I know we're coming from a low bar. Like, I'm pleased that he hit the ball hard. It's not really It's not really like a stellar 10 out of 10 performance, but if you're looking for like signs of life, as I said, that was one. So slightly unlucky for him, but perhaps just an indication that something might be coming from him. I'm not like hugely confident, but things like that just give you a little bit of, okay, maybe.
There's something. I mean, when I did the new signing profile for Arseblog News, I went through lots of tape, including his time at Leverkusen, and floated a theory about him playing from the right-hand side. I know he was coming in as the kind of left 8 Xhaka replacement in our minds, and he obviously started the season in that position, but I just think his body mechanics suit that side of the pitch. I think he welcomes the ball completely differently. It's much more open. His first touch is more incisive, whereas on the left-hand side, his body position tends to be a bit more closed when receiving the ball, which I think can explain a lot of his safe play, because I don't think he has the ability to scan coming from the left-hand side. So there were signs of life. And I think, look, you need to consider the quality of the opposition. And yes, there were times in this game where he still felt a bit passive. But judging his performance in terms of his actions, there were some of those late runs into the box. There were some nice moments out by the touchline where he was combining with Saka and Ben White. I think he looked more secure technically. And we've spoken about the header that he should have scored. I liked the intention of this chance, really driving into the box and firing a shot into the corner. It was a lot closer than I thought, actually. I thought it was quite comfortably wide, but having looked at the replay, it just whistled past the post. And I just want to shake him. Come on, you can do it. More of that. I think he's such an imposing figure with tons of experience, and now there's a real chance for him to stamp himself on this team with all of our injuries. And I would just like a bit more bite, a bit more initiative in his play. But overall, I think there have been some better signs in recent weeks. But I just want to get him by the shoulders and say, you can do it. You can do it. Just please. I know he's got the talent, but games have too often passed him by. And I think it's been an interesting time for him coming in on that right side, because I think he has looked a bit more alive. But I would just, a bit more of that, because the signs have been there. I think the Newcastle game helped him. I think the West Ham game helped him. So slowly, we're beginning to see something. It's just about whether he can kind of keep it up. And I'm looking at Burnley this weekend, and I see another opportunity for him there to really put himself on a game.
Yeah, he's a bit more involved in the last couple of weeks. Like 3 tackles last night, more than any other player. 3 shots last night, which I think is more than any other player as well. No goals, of course. You've got to deliver the end product, but I hope that things like this can sort of help rebuild his confidence, and we can see more from him, because given the way injuries are going, we're going to need it from everybody. Now, we talked about Martinelli going outside, and Sevilla rejigged. They cut off some of that space. He wasn't necessarily having to deal with Juanlu. He was having to deal with Bade. Is that the central defender?
Yes.
He was having to deal with him a bit more. But what's great about Martinelli is that he has the ability to do it on the outside. He also has the ability to do it on the inside, as we saw for the goal. A quick throw from Zinchenko. Martinelli nips ahead of the guy, nicks the ball, drives on, plays it to Bukayo Saka. Still plenty for Bukayo Saka to do in that situation, and after a couple of weeks where he hasn't been quite at his best either, you're looking at this and going, right, can you make the most of this opportunity? And he absolutely did. The defender, I'm not sure. I think they said on TV afterwards, it's a bit like Arjen Robben, where you kind of know what he's going to do, but you can't stop him. You can't stop him doing it. And I think that, it's maybe a little bit unfair to Bukayo Saka, because he has the ability to go on his right foot, which Robben very, very rarely did. But on this occasion, chops it back inside. Very, very good finish. It's 2-0. And, that combination between our 2 wingers, we talked about them and how important they were going to be for a result and a performance, and, there it is.
I thought he was offside, actually.
No, the guy, the deeper guy, the guy closest to camera was playing him on,
But in real time, it looked like he'd just gone a yard or two too early. But yeah, the execution's brilliant. I think he needed this game because there'd just been a few moments in recent weeks where he looked a bit tired. He'd carried a few knocks again, as always. And you know what a lot of teams do in the Premier League now is they double up on him. So this was a moment where he was able to isolate a winger 1v1. The defending isn't great. I think it's Pedrosa again. He's too square. He puts too much of his body weight onto the right side trying to chase Saka. But as soon as he cut inside, I just thought this is a goal. You know, he's got such strong technique and confidence in the way he can finish from that right side. And this doesn't need to be a slight on Eddie Nketiah, because I think the way Sevilla played yesterday definitely played into our hands. But I just think you can see the stylistic difference of what Trossard brings to the team compared to him, where his fluidity of movement, the way he drifts left or right to create overloads, the space that he can vacate, which Saka and Martinelli can then exploit, just gives us something extra. You know, it's how we play with Jesus. Our centre forward needs to be a technical and tactical reference point, and I don't think it's unfair to say that those relationships break down slightly, especially Martinelli, who has never played well consistently with Nketiah, with a more typical centre forward leading our line. But I just like what Trossard can bring us from that position, and there's no doubt in my mind that Martinelli and Saka were beneficiaries of that yesterday. Yeah,
I mean, Trossard spoke on TV afterwards and was asked, about his ability to play in different forward positions, and he said, probably I'm paraphrasing, he said, my advantage is that I can go on both feet. You know, he's comfortable on both feet, on his left and on his right. And I think the movement, because he's more naturally a player who wants to get on the ball than Eddie, I think that suits that deployment of him in the centre forward position.
Yeah, completely. And I think you saw there when Trossard maybe came over for the throw-in, Saka was able to take that space in a more central zone. It just takes one pass from Martinelli to set him free, and you know, that's what we needed from them. Threat in behind, the ability to isolate them against fullbacks. And I don't know if this will be the case for Burnley again on Saturday, but for me last night, it made total sense to play with Trossard. An assist for Martinelli, a goal and an assist for Saka. It's all you can ask for, really. And speaking of Trossard, all 5 of his goals this season across all competitions have been assisted by Bukayo Saka. So that's a relationship. That's a relationship we'd like to exploit. So, and also, which I thought was interesting, another stat, 5 of Trossard's 6 goals for Arsenal have either been the opening goal of the game or an equaliser, which shows that he kind of brings a lot of value in how he is scoring goals.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of been a little bit quiet when he starts sometimes, you know, the sort of perception of him as somebody who's more effective off the bench, you know, is maybe a little unfair, because I think it's his quality that makes him good off the bench, and his ability to get into the pace of a game and get up to speed in a game very quickly, which not everyone can do. So it's a good trait to have as a footballer, but maybe when he starts, he's not quite as effective. And I think in this game, he really was. He was very lively. The goal was tucked away very nicely. His movement was excellent. And that relationship with Bukayo Saka, you know, if I am Mikel Arteta and I don't have Partey and Odegaard, and if Partey and Odegaard affects the relationship between Saka and Ben White, for example, which I think it does a little bit, and Tomiyasu and Martinelli aren't quite on the same wavelength at times. Like really early in the game, Tomiyasu made a run in behind and he was looking for the pass from Martinelli. He didn't get it and he was really not happy about it, you know. And I'm not saying Martinelli ignored him and he didn't do anything wrong with the ball, but those relationships that we talk about as very effective are something you kind of need to lean into. So if you're looking for ways to open up a team, if you know that Saka and Trossard have got that thing going on, then that's something good to have in your back pocket. Like we said, Sevilla didn't have a shot until the 97th minute, something like that, and it was a relatively routine save for David Raya. I mean, were you at all surprised at how much do you put their ineffectiveness down to how well we played, and how much would you put down to just how poor they were, maybe how poor or strange team selection was? You get someone like Rakitic and you bring him off the bench and he's effective and he makes your team immediately more cohesive. I know that they brought Soumare on and then he had to go off because he hurt himself fouling Rice and all the rest of it. But, where's your balanceometer on that one?
Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Sevilla are a great team. I think they're in a difficult moment with a new manager who clearly had a plan coming into the game to be defensively secure, kick us around a bit, be physical, but the plan was so completely and utterly different from the execution. And I think Diego Alonso needs to take some responsibility for that, because you either do one thing or the other, and they did neither. And I think maybe it would have left them a bit more susceptible defensively, but they have some talented players to be a bit more offensively inclined. And they just had wingers as their forwards. Lamela couldn't get into the game. They had three defensive midfielders playing in, Fernando, Gibralso, and who was the other one? I think it was Joan Jordan. So there's no real incision or craft in that midfield, and they were there to just solely stop Arsenal. That being said, I thought it was a really strong performance from us. It was a performance where we smelled blood early on and really looked to assert ourselves on the game. I think it was clear very early on that we were the better team. And what I loved was not only our sort of freedom and incisiveness in an attacking sense, where we were able to get our threats in behind in terms of Martinelli, in terms of Saka. Trossard was there linking everything together. But when Sevilla did have the ball, we just suffocated them completely. They couldn't get out anywhere. Tomiyasu was pressing deep into their half. Ben White was pushing deep into their half. I have to say again, I thought Declan Rice was brilliant, and we don't speak about it because it's just become so normal.
Well, I was going to ask you about it because we talked about William Saliba and just how good he is, and I was going to ask you about his comments afterwards, where he was asked if he prefers playing 6 or 8, and he said, I think my best position is probably 6. That's where I feel more comfortable. As an 8, I do get a bit excited to dribble with the ball. Obviously, when I'm playing there, it's my job to try and create, but that's not my biggest strength. My biggest strength is breaking up play, taking the ball from deep, trying to dictate. But every time Mikel says, you're playing 8, I do get excited because I get to make those runs into the box. I get to run with the ball. I get to show the other side of my game, which is really good. And at the moment, we're so short with injury. So he is being asked to play there. Those driving runs forward are obviously very eye-catching. There was one in particular where we got to the edge of the box and I was like, just go for it. Just get in there and just, have a go. Instead, I think he played a little pass outside to Martinelli. But what stands out for me is the engine. And when the opposition have the ball, and in particular when they get the ball, his first thought is like, fuck off. This is our ball. I'm going to get it back. And even in the 90th minute, there was one, 90th minute or towards injury time, maybe in injury time, where the ball broke in midfield and he just charged back, took possession, kept it moving. And it's just so unbelievably impressive that he has the legs and the stamina and the willingness to do that kind of running in the 92nd minute when the game is won. I think that's just part and parcel of who he is.
I mean, what an addition he's been for us. I think he's made such a difference to our play off the ball. And how nice is it to watch a midfielder sprint and not worry or not have to worry about his thigh muscle exploding? It's just, he is such a physical specimen. There was one incident in particular, I think it was maybe midway through the first half, where he won a duel that he had no right to win. It was a bouncing ball on around halfway. And I think there were 2 Sevilla players around it. But he just came in, towed the ball away, put one of the Sevilla players on his arse and set us off again.
Yeah.
And it was just like, he wins balls that he has no right to win. And it's just, there are so many incidents in every game where I just think, how has he done that?
Yeah.
And even in the lead up to into the opening goal, he just stiff-armed Eric Lamela, took his lunch money, and he was the one that gave it to Jorginho before the pass. And it's just like, man, what a player.
He's so impressive.
And it's what I said before. He's just managed to raise his level, but also become so consistent that we don't speak about it because it's just something we accept. And how often, we were cursed with the £72 million Nicola Pepe. Has anyone mentioned his price since he came in?
I feel like we should probably throw West Ham another 20 million just to be fair. If you want to be proper class, do things the right way. It's unbelievable. It really is. He's just so.
He just makes a huge difference in how we can suffocate teams.
Exactly, and
because I'm not scared about any counter attacks anymore. And he's just such a leader, such a strong personality, and I think. Look, you can debate whether we've been able to replace Granit Xhaka effectively on the pitch with Kai Havertz and a few other players, which haven't quite been so effective yet this season. But I think in terms of his leadership, his stature, his presence, it's been seamless. It's been absolutely seamless with Declan Rice.
Yeah, I think if you're an Arsenal player, you must love playing with Declan Rice. If I'm, as good as William Saliba is, and as good as Gabriel is, and as good as Tomiyasu is, and as good as those partnerships are, and that back four are, to have somebody like that ahead of you is just unbelievable. It just gives you such a platform. I'm sort of lost for words about how good he is, and I thought he was a good player before he joined Arsenal, and I've been surprised at the levels to his game, and I hope as this season goes on we continue to see more of those and more of those emerge. And I think you make a really good point about the leadership, about that sort of dressing room presence, on pitch presence that maybe we have lost with Xhaka leaving. Before we move on, the other game in the group, 1-0 win for PSV Eindhoven over Lens. So it leaves the group kind of open a bit, but we're still in a good position. Sevilla bottom of the group, then Lens, then PSV. And the next game, I think, is
Lens at home.
Is Lens at home, is it? Yeah, it is, towards the end of November. So, a chance to wrap things up there.
Yep. You'd think so, and you'd hope so. Look, obviously there was a potential chance for us to qualify yesterday, but I think at home you'd expect us to take care of business. It won't be an easy game. I think Lens have shown themselves to be a good side in this group. They are defensively secure, have some good players up front that can cause problems, but with qualification on the line, I think at home you'd expect Arsenal to win. And if we can just keep these injuries to a minimum, I know there's an international break coming now, which can hopefully be a good thing for us. But to be able to qualify with one game to spare and, going away to PSV, that would just be a nice security blanket, because if we have to go away and maybe need something, that's when things can get a bit sticky, no matter who you're playing in Europe. Yeah.
So just sort of an overall assessment of the Arsenal performance. I said to somebody this morning, I feel like if last year's team was one with kind of youthful abandon, this year's team feels a bit more adolescent. We're growing into ourselves. We're maturing. We're maybe not quite as flamboyant as we were, but we're certainly more controlled. We certainly are capable of nullifying most teams. And, when we talked maybe before the Newcastle game, I said we're a difficult team to beat. And as it turns out, you can only beat Arsenal if you get given a goal that should never have been given while you've got 11 men on the pitch when you should have 10 and all the rest of it, right? So I think this is the kind of performance that Mikel Arteta will really like. but maybe in 2 months or 3 months' time, it's the kind of performance based on the domination that you have of the ball and territory and the areas in which you have the ball that you're looking at it being a bit more than a 2-0 win. And that's not to be greedy, but it's just to try and look at the next step for this team and where it can go.
I've always thought that this team lacked that last bit of extra edge to really step on the jugular. You know, I think we've had big wins under Mikel Arteta, but I have also seen us comfortable with 20 minutes to go and not really push for more goals. And I'm not sure if that's a instruction from Arteta or more of the team just kind of preparing to manage games. He spoke quite honestly on TNT Sports before the game about how he wants us to be more incisive as an attacking unit, but also explained how if he could play every minute in the opposition half, he would. You know, so I think it's been about the evolution of this team being able to find a balance between controlling games, being mature in how we give up chances, but also not letting that affect our attacking vibe and abandon, you know, which I think was so exciting to watch last year. And it was what made us so special, particularly in that pre-World Cup stage where we topped the league. You know, we were just playing such amazing high intensity football. So I think it's been a journey, and I don't think we can ignore the effect that injuries have had on this team, because, you know, it's been such a stop-start season. Players haven't been able to develop relationships. There have been different lineups almost every week, you know, so maybe those natural automatisms don't have a chance to develop as efficiently because one week it's Eddie up front, one week it's Trossard on the left, another week it's, you know, Ødegaard as the right 8, another week it's, you know, Fabio Vieira coming in. So we haven't really had a chance to settle, whereas last year, you know, we could say the first 11 every week with our eyes closed. It was the same every week. So I don't think we can ignore that, but I do think there have been a little or a few issues in our play, but I'm also willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, I've seen us do it, I know we can do it, and I think this is just the next evolution in us as a team, particularly playing in Europe where maybe we will need to be a bit more sensible. But in terms of the element of control that we can exert on games, I think that's been extremely clear.
Yeah.
You know, apart from that one game where we caught Lens on an extremely good night and we were maybe 5 or 10% below our normal levels, we've been extremely assured. And I think you just need to add that little bit of maturity in your performances in Europe because teams can punish you, you know, and I think hopefully now injuries can be kept to a minimum. We can really start to find a consistent 11, to really take that next step in an attacking sense.
I think the positive thing, you know, is that we can put in a performance like that against Sevilla, who I expected to be better, and I think they were poor, but, you know, you can only play against who you're playing against on the night, but we did it without Martin Ødegaard, without Thomas Partey, without Emile Smith-Rowe, without Gabriel Jesus, who, let's not forget, was the difference maker in the away game. No Jurrien Timber, who's, you know, because we didn't see enough of him, I think he kind of gets overlooked a little bit in terms of his absence. No Eddie, who's played a lot this season. So with all those absences, to be able to play as well as we did and to get the result that we did, and to, you know, to do it without being in trouble, with no drama, no hassle, no nonsense, all of it was very pleasing, a good way to get back to winning ways. Unlike, it has to be said, Manchester United last night.
There we go.
Here we go.
I was waiting when you were going to chime that in.
Yeah, the perfect segue. I mean, what did you make of some of the decisions in this game? Because we had a little bit of a chat last night on WhatsApp about the Rashford red card, and I think we differ slightly on this one in that you think it's harsh, and I can see why, because there's clearly no intent. But when you see the replay, he does, in his effort to shield the ball, throw his leg out quite far. It's not like near the ball itself. He's just trying to move his body. The unfortunate thing is the Sevilla guy gets in the way. like applying my rule of thumb to this, like if an Arsenal player did that, I'd be like, oh, fuck, that's going to be a red card. And I think if somebody had done that to Bukayo Saka, or if somebody had done that to Gabriel Martinelli, I think we'd all be screaming for a red card. It is unfortunate, but I do think it's a red card.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on it. I have to say it did feel harsh at the time, and it still does a little bit, I have to say, because look, I can understand why it's given, because the contact is really nasty. The studs go down on the ankle. His foot is planted. It's a dangerous one. And I know intent doesn't always need to be present in these cases, but in my view, it was an accident. And I think he was trying to shield the ball. I don't know. I think I would have been quite upset if that was an Arsenal player getting sent off. But also, we've already been screwed over enough this season, so I'm not going to cry about it happening to United.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a little bit harsh in my view, but just very funny because it triggered an incredible collapse.
Well, I mean, it was 2-0 to United at that point, and then within about a minute, it was 2-1, and then there were two penalties where I feel like at some point this is going to be a discussion that we're going to have. What did you make of the penalty awarded to FC Copenhagen?
It's stupid.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I'm not Harry Maguire's biggest fan or anything like that, but I mean, that was absurd to me. Similarly, the one that Manchester United got at the other end, it's just like, okay, the ball hit his hand, but you know, the handball thing is just it's a nightmare to navigate, isn't it? Because you just don't know. I mean, the one at the end of our game when Fabio Vieira, like, they didn't show a definitive replay on it, but
no,
it was like, my heart was like, oh fuck, this is Champions League. They give handballs for all kinds of things in Europe. This is going to be a penalty. And then it was like, oh, check complete. So maybe they had a better angle than we did, but it was just the way that it came at him and the movement of his arm. I was worried about it because these are the kinds of decisions that you see given in the Champions League.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous, and the threshold for giving handball is just so low, you know, for something that can have such a big effect on a game. You know, a penalty is your greatest chance to score in football, and we're giving teams this opportunity from incidents that happen in crowded penalty areas, from set pieces, and it just seems crazy to me. What I will say is that they are incredibly consistent in how they give handballs, which is, I guess, in one way good, but just the threshold for them being given, in my opinion, is ridiculous. I mean, the Copenhagen one, you know, the one that's given as a foul for United to get a penalty, is just crazy to me. The guy's jumping for the ball. He goes over his head. His arm is just slightly out of his natural body line. Maguire heads it down. It hits him on the arm and they give it. And it's just like, there's no reason that should be a penalty. But I kind of expected them to give it because, first of all, they gave the first one. But also, like you said, they just give them so willy-nilly and freely in Europe. And, you know, I can't complain too much because the incident itself gave me an extreme amount of joy because Bruno Fernandes scoring the penalty led to Alejandro Garnacho shushing the FC Copenhagen crowd.
You shot your bolt too soon there, pal.
Which left a brilliant still image. And that's a situation I think he'll learn from, because he just looks so incredibly stupid. You know, there was that picture of him shushing the crowd, and then at full time he was kind of sat on his haunches on the ground being patted on the back by a United member of staff. You know, fuck that guy and his weird teeth. But yeah, what happened afterwards was just amazing. You can always rely on United this season to just keep the good vibes going.
Long may
it's
it
amazing.
last. Long may it last. Some terrible, terrible defending for the two goals.
Dallo at the back post.
Oh my goodness!
I think he was thinking about his grocery list or something. Because he just was so unaware of the guy coming in behind him. But also, where's the communication? Why is nobody telling him that there's a guy behind him?
Well, I mean, he saw him for the equaliser. He definitely saw him because he had a look and then sort of got dragged in. And then I don't know. Does he have the memory of a goldfish? 0.2 of a second. He just forgot that the guy was behind him. And the winner, the criminal turning your back on the shot situation. But like you say, from our point of view, it's extremely funny. And long may this kind of shit last. And I don't think we can go, Phil, without just taking a moment to doff our cap to our friends in Dortmund who beat Newcastle 2-0, left Newcastle bottom of that group. It is a very tight group, in fairness. Newcastle bottom with 4, Milan on 5, PSG on 6, and Dortmund on 7. So it's a very tightly situated group. But it's very funny to see that happen to Newcastle after what we just went through with them.
I don't know what Eddie Howe was watching, but he must have seen something that I didn't see. Prick. Always like Borussia Dortmund. Great bunch of lads down there at the Signal Iduna Park. It's always good. They still have a chance to qualify, which is annoying, but it's kind of an uphill battle. I think they will feel confident with their home fixtures, to be honest, as always. But it's it's not easy, and the team it was the group of death. So fingers crossed that can be the end of their hopes. And I think on the night, Bayern qualified for the knockout stages, Real Madrid, Inter qualified as well, and then I think it was RB Leipzig and Man City who qualified on Tuesday night. So, a decent level already going through, and hopefully we can be there in the next week, the next match week.
Hopefully. All right. Well, look, we had better leave it there. Phil, thank you for struggling through. None of the listeners can see the amount of times that we've had to put ourselves on mute to either cough or sneeze and all the rest of it. Or
the one time that I didn't.
Well, I've cut that out. I will cut that out. So don't worry. Nobody needs to hear that. I promise you. Go get a Lemsip, feel better, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much, and see you on the next one.
Thank you very much indeed to Phil. You can find him on Twitter at _Phil Costa, at _Phil Costa. Right, we are going to leave it there for this week's show. Thank you so much, as always, for being with us. Of course, we will have our usual Premier League preview podcast for you over on Patreon tomorrow afternoon as we look ahead to our game against Burnley, after which there is, of course, an interlull again. But hey, let's hope we can take 3 points going into that one and get some bodies back, perhaps, for the games that come up after the international break. If you want to listen to that, if you're not already a member, you can get instant access to everything that we do on Patreon, as well as supporting everything that we do on Arseblog too. For about $5 a month, sign up at patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, take it easy, folks, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye. Welcome back to Sky Sports News. A little later, we will be talking to Gary Neville about the standard of officiating and VAR in the Premier League. He has some very, very significant concerns about decisions that have been made in games that reflect poorly on the quality of the league and the referees themselves. Yes? I'm live on air, yes? I see. Okay. I understand. Welcome back to Sky Sports News, and later this hour we'll be talking to Gary Neville, who has absolutely no concerns about the standard of refereeing at all. He thinks it's perfectly fine, and indeed the big problem is managers complaining about bad decisions in games, not the bad decisions themselves. Unless, of course, it's a decision that goes against Manchester United, in which case he'll be all over Twitter bleating about it like the little cunt he is. Yes? Yes, I did, and I would do it again. Certainly, I'll clear out my desk. No regrets!